Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Hey Brittany. In today's episode, we're doing The Better Sister, so let's go ahead and get into it. Alrighty, so why am I watching The Better Sister? This was a TV show that my sister wanted to watch. I know that Jessica Biel is involved in the project. She seems to be a executive producer on a lot of different TV shows and movies, so I knew that this was probably going to be good just because I did watch The Sinner season 1. It was a really crazy season, storyline and all of that stuff, but it was also very good. So I was hoping that The Better Sister would be good as well. It seems to be getting a lot of good reviews. It's only on Prime. We have Prime, so we were able to watch it. And let's go ahead and talk about my thoughts. I will say before we even get into anything that the ending was not what I thought it was going to be. My sister and I, we did keep rewinding things as we watched each like scene, episode, and so on, because there were little things that we felt like, hey, you know, this seems like it should be important, so we wanted to rewind and make sure that we actually saw it and then processed the information and kept watching, so things made a little bit more sense as we remember those earlier things that we saw, because if you weren't really paying attention, there were some things that you would have missed along the way, and my sister and I were really good at figuring out kind of like, what I usually say is that for a TV show to be successful, you can't have people do the obvious things, because if they did the obvious thing, then there would be no show to film. So really, you have people do what's not so obvious just to kind of keep the storyline going. So we try to think that way when we're posting a TV show, like, hey, what's important here? What are we missing? That sort of thing. And that kind of helps us to kind of predict what we think is going to happen. But I was totally caught off guard by how this TV show unfolded in terms of outing who the killer was. That was not something that I would have been able to predict, even though we were rewinding and trying to piece things together as we were watching the show. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rest of the episode. Okay, so let's start with the backstory. So Chloe is a CEO, I guess, of The Real Thing, which is her company. I don't quite know exactly what she does, but she seems like she's a feminist and one of these people who puts or releases or whatever different products that benefit women, like maybe like a women's magazine or something like that. Just women empowerment is the point of what I'm saying. And so she has her own company. There's a board that she answers to. She has an influential circle of friends. We have Catherine, we have Bill. I actually met Catherine a long time ago, the actress who plays Catherine. Is it Lorraine Toussaint or something like that? I met her while I was working at a cupcake shop back in New York, and she came in and I recognized her from Orange is the New Black. And it was just really cool to see her in person, because I've seen Anthony Bourdain. I don't know if I've seen any other celebrities, but those are the two that I remember from when I was working at that cupcake shop, and it was just really cool to see her because in remembering how she looks, I also know that she used to do Law and Order, like the really old episodes, and she used to have Sister Locked as well, so it was just really cool to see her in person. So when I saw her in The Better Sister, I instantly recognized who she was, and I was glad to see that she's acting. She's in this TV series, and she played a very big role as far as like wielding and showing like what her influence is in this universe. So we have Catherine, who's super influential. We have Bill, who is her husband's boss, and they seem like they are a really close group of friends. They really have each other's back, and they're just doing whatever they can to help each other succeed. And so that seems like they have a good circle of friends. And what we know, I think I missed maybe like the first 5 minutes of the first episode, and I think Chloe is getting some type of award, and Adam is late to the event or whatever. And so we see that there's some maybe type of weird dynamic between them. We're not 100% sure. And then we have Adam. He is a lawyer. We find out a little bit more about his backstory as the season progresses, but he was a DA and then he moved into private practice, and he, again, Bill is his boss, so he works for Bill, and that's kind of what we learn within like the first 5 minutes. I've added some details in there from what I do know now, having watched everything through, so I just want to kind of put things to you guys to give you guys information while I'm still also going to go through the flow of how everything kind of played out episode by episode until you reach the end. Now, speaking of things that we kind of learn at the end, what we find out is that Adam is working with a group called the Gentry Group, and we know that he was supposed to meet with them the day that he was killed. We also know from what we find out later on that he was working with the FBI and he was informing on the Gentry Group. Okay, so Adam's death. So we have Chloe finding Adam. She finds him as she goes to the Hamptons home after being at some gathering that Catherine was hosting. Adam was supposed to be there, but he had a work meeting, so he was late, and he was supposed to meet her at home. So we see her leaving that party. She's driving home. She gets out. She goes in her home. She looks out the window. She turns around and she notices that things are knocked over. She sees her husband. She goes to kind of like check him and see if he's alive and all of that stuff. Like she's in shock. She's panicking because she sees her husband on the floor. He's very bloody and all of that stuff. He's not moving, and so she's really concerned for him. And then we also, one thing that my sister pointed out was that because we didn't know what was going to happen really, because we haven't read the books or anything like that, we didn't read any spoilers, so we weren't really sure what was going to happen. And my sister said that she thought that Chloe was intentionally trying to get his blood all over her dress. I didn't pick up on that when I was watching it. I thought that that was an interesting observation. And then we see her quickly call the cops, thank goodness, because at that point she wasn't really sure if anybody was in the house with her. So obviously, yeah, you need to call the cops and be prepared to defend yourself if you are not alone at that point. And so she calls the cops, and she's trying to get them there, and they're like, hey, you know, is anybody there with you? Okay, get outside and wait for us outside. And this is where they kind of flash back and they show you a little bit more than what they originally showed the first run through. So the first run through, we just see her pulling up to her house. She's walking inside, but then it flashes back to, I think, her actually holding a knife when she's running out of the house. And we rewound it and we saw that she had a phone and a knife that she got out of the car with. And then we see her pick up her phone and her knife when she's running out of the house because the cops told her to wait outside. And we see that at that point the knife is bloody. So we don't know how Adam dies at this point, but even she knows, hey, it's a bad look. I have a knife, it's bloody, blah, blah, blah. So she ends up tripping and the knife falls under the car, and I guess she forgets about it or something like that. And then we see like the next day she is brought back with her son, or yeah, I think she's brought back with her son, and she ends up going to the car and she sees the knife, so she's trying to hide it because obviously this is going to make her look guilty because it is her knife. It does have his blood on it, so people are not going to really know without like testing it and everything, like to see if the knife matches the knife wound. And actually, spoiler, it would match because, okay, yeah, so I'll just not say that, but it's a good thing that she was smart and thought to hide the knife, and I'll probably explain that why a little bit later because I don't want to spoil that now. Basically, just going back a little bit, so when the cops come, they process everything. She's still in her bloody dress, and it's very reminiscent of Jackie Kennedy when she was in the car with JFK and she had blood all over her. She didn't want to change to swear an LBJ, so it's very reminiscent of that. And so anyway, she's at the police station. They're questioning her. They think she's guilty. And so they take pictures, they fingerprint her, all of that stuff. She's finally able to go home. But she goes, I don't know where she goes. I think she goes to her son Ethan's friend's house to get him because that's where he is. And she is not the one who tells him like, hey, your father's dead. For whatever reason, she can't do it. So the detectives do it. And they are really critical of the family. The female detective, I'm just gonna say Detective Nancy, she thinks that either Chloe or Ethan did it, so she's a little bit harsh with them and she's not very sympathetic, and she's really over analyzing everything, which she should do because that's her job, but she also should be a little bit more considerate of everything that this family is going through as she's making her observations, because she's at times just outright hostile, and she's one of those smart aleck people who really make smart comments all the time, and they're just trying to get under your skin and kind of force you to do something that you wouldn't normally do because they're rattling you. And so anyway, that's how she operates, Detective Nancy. And so anyway, Chloe and Ethan go back to the house. Detectives are with them. They're wanting to search everything again. They're wanting to gauge their reaction. And so we have Chloe and Ethan. They go back by the pool. And what I thought was weird was that it seemed like Ethan and Chloe were kind of not very close. So I got the feeling that she was his stepmother. I didn't think that she was his biological mother. I thought she was a little colder, a little distant, and then we kind of see her warming up to him a little bit more throughout the rest of the season. And then we have her talking to him by the pool. She ends up walking away and she goes to the beach, and she has just flip phone that she's trying to get rid of. So she's breaking it down, breaking it apart, and she's getting rid of the phone basically. And I'm like, why would you do that out in the open? Like, everyone can see that you're going for a walk, and if they need to retrace your steps, they would be easily able to do that because they can see you, right? And so Detective Nancy makes it obvious that she saw her go for a walk. So we don't know if she saw her like getting rid of the phone or any of that stuff, but we know that she's like really watching them. So that is where we are as far as everything that happens with Adam. We know that Chloe is not Ethan's biological mom, so they tell her. Detective Bowen, that's the male partner for Detective Nancy, he tells her, hey, you know, we need to get in contact with Ethan's biological mom. And she's like, oh, you know, we have a restraining order against her, blah blah blah, she can't take him, she's not fit, whatever. And he reveals that the restraining order was only against Nikki in terms of Adam, so it doesn't apply to Ethan, so she can take Ethan, and then they need to make contact with her so that Ethan can go with his biological mom. So they end up calling her, and they flash to her receiving the call. She's stealing pills from somebody or borrowing pills, whatever, and we see that she gets the phone call, she talks to them, and presumably she's on her way to New York to take care of Ethan. Alrighty, so Ethan's arrest and trial. So we have, at this point, we have Nikki completely in the picture. She's shown up unannounced to Chloe's house. Obviously, Chloe should have been expecting her. She showed up, she had her luggage with her. She met some guy while she was either flying or on the train to New York, and she's a little too friendly with him. He comes up, he recognizes who they are, like, oh, you know, sorry about your loss and all that stuff, and they're just trying to get rid of him because obviously this is a private family matter, and Chloe and Nikki are sort of hostile to each other. Chloe doesn't want Nikki to stay at her house. She's like, hey, you can just stay here for one night, and then you gotta go, you gotta stay somewhere else. Like, where are you staying? You're not staying here. And then Ethan is obviously in the middle of this dynamic because he's grown up predominantly with Chloe, but he knows that Nikki is his mother, and so really we're just seeing the sisters battle it out in terms of doing what's best for Ethan. And this is where we have the detectives come to the penthouse, and they're questioning Chloe and Nikki about Ethan, and I can't recall exactly the questions that they're asking, but we know that they think that Chloe or Ethan are guilty, so they're keeping a close eye on them, and they end up bringing up a incident that Ethan had at his school where he bought a gun, and Chloe's just like, oh, that was a misunderstanding. It got put in the wrong bag, or Ethan grabbed the wrong bag and went to school with it, blah, blah, blah. And so when we learn a little bit more about that later, Ethan reveals that he was actually trying to get rid of the gun. He didn't want it in his home. And so that is part of the build-up between the dynamic in Ethan and Adam that I'll get into a little bit later. But Nikki can instantly pick up on the fact that these are kind of like inappropriate questions to be asking in terms of Ethan. So she knows right away that they are gunning for Ethan. She's like, hey, you know, you guys gotta leave. You're not welcome here. We don't want to speak to you without a lawyer, that sort of thing. And then Detective Nancy's like, oh, she throws some sort of parting shot to make it crystal clear, like, hey, we're gunning for Ethan, and Nikki is really upset about this. She's like, hey, you need to get a lawyer for him, blah, blah, blah. So Chloe ends up calling Jake, which is a colleague of her husband, Adam, and he gives her a referral to a lawyer named Michelle Sanders. Then what we have happening is that, like, maybe like the next day or something like that, Detective Nancy and Detective Bowen, they end up coming back with a warrant, and they're coming to search the place, and we have no idea what they're looking for, but they just want to search whatever they can to see what comes up. And what we know is that from the questioning of Ethan the day or the morning after his dad was murdered, they asked him if anything was missing, and he said some shoes and some other stuff, and they found those items in his possession with blood on them. So they took that as evidence and the reason to arrest him for killing his dad. And just prior to them arresting him, they show up to the house, they have a warrant. The lawyer comes in kind of just as they're about to start searching, and she's like, hey, you know, you can't search, you can only search areas where Ethan has been. Is there anywhere in the home where Ethan would not have access to? It's the home office. So they go and talk in the home office, and they're just trying to figure out what's going on, how to best protect Ethan and all of this stuff. And when we see them go into the home office, Ethan has a cell phone that he puts into like the chair cushion, and he's able to do that because they can't search the home office, which is very smart. And they're just having a conversation about what their strategy is at this point, how they're going to help Ethan on all that stuff. And then Ethan gets arrested and taken to jail. And then later on, when the moms are going to visit Ethan in jail, they really don't know where he's being kept. So they're giving the runaround about where he's being kept. They find out, they want to go see him. And we know at this point that Chloe has found the phone that Ethan had hidden. And she, I think it's like dead or something, so she needs to charge it. And she's driving, so she can't really pay attention because they're in the car at this point. And Nikki has the phone, and Nikki knows what this phone is. And we know that in retrospect is why I'm saying that. And she ends up wiping everything on the phone, and when Chloe is able to look at it, she's like, oh, there's nothing on it, blah blah blah. And obviously that was kind of stupid, because if you know the phone number, you can just look and see what the text messages were between that phone and other phones. Like, you have to go to the carrier and they can print out all of that. So in retrospect, it was really stupid to wipe the phone, because if a detective got access to it, all they had to do was just request the cell phone history from the carrier and all of that stuff. So wiping the phone didn't really help as much in that sense. It just kept Chloe in the dark, but the detectives, they would have been able to put everything together and figure it out pretty quickly. Okay, so now we have Ethan. He is at his arraignment. So this is basically where they decide, does he get bail? Does he get to go home? And all of this stuff. And this is a really frustrating moment for me, because the prosecutor is a black male lawyer, and he's just gunning for Ethan. Like, it's almost like he's being racist towards Ethan, because they are trying to determine whether or not he gets bail. And basically the black lawyer's point is, hey, if Ethan was black, he would not be getting bail, he would be in jail. So this is forcing the lawyer to keep Ethan from getting bail, just because if he was black, they would have handled this differently. And I really hate that he went that angle, because you do have Michelle Sanders, who's a black woman, you have the black prosecutor, and she should have really hit home like, hey, race has nothing to do with this, because the dad's white, the son is white, the mom's white, right? So there's nothing racial about anything happening in this circumstance. So the lawyer should not have even been able to get away with making that comment, because it was inappropriate in this particular case. Additionally, the black prosecutor was so convinced and intent on pinning Ethan for this crime that we know he did not commit, because he refused to let the detective Nancy and Bowen look for or even consider other suspects, because he felt like it would weaken the case that they had against Ethan. And even the case that they had against Ethan was circumstantial, because all they had was a scratch on Ethan's arm. They didn't really know when he got it, and I thought it looked scabbed over, but obviously it was a fresh wound because of his involvement in everything that happened leading up to his dad's murder, or just right after his dad's murder. So it was a fresh cut, but when I saw it, I thought it looked healed, and they wouldn't have been able to tell exactly when he got it. It was my assumption from what I could see. And then also they had blood on his shoes that they found in his room, but it was his own blood, so that there was nothing really tying him directly to Adam to say, hey, you're the one who attacked your father. So I didn't think that they had enough evidence. My sister didn't think this either, that they had enough evidence to say that he was the one who murdered his father, because they were saying that they didn't normally set the alarm, but the alarm was set that day or whatever, and somebody disabled it. And so they said, well, Ethan would have known the code to disable it. So they have things that they can try to use against Ethan, but they were not concrete, firm, undeniable evidence that says, Ethan, you did this, you killed your father. Okay, next let's talk about Chloe and Nikki's relationship. So obviously Chloe is super successful. She's married, she lives in Manhattan, she lives in a penthouse, she has multiple homes, she has an influential circle of friends. Nikki, on the other hand, is a recovering addict. She's been sober, I think she said, for 5 years or something like that. She lives in Cleveland, Ohio. We later on see that she is taking care of Adam's mother. So Nikki and Adam, they obviously come from humble beginnings, middle class, that sort of thing. We know that they live completely different lives just because of that. Also, we see the girls fighting a lot over what they remember of their past. So their dad was in the war. I believe he does have PTSD, and then Nikki is older than Chloe, so she has different memories, or she has the same memories, but she's able to contextualize and actually understand what was happening, whereas Chloe just remembers one part of what happened, and she's just like blind to everything else that was happening. So I don't know how this comes up, but basically Chloe had made a point about, oh, you know, I got my period, and do you remember when mom put the locks on the door or whatever? And so she's just thinking like innocently of that, the mom putting locks on the door, and just thinking that she was doing that to give them privacy or whatever. And Nikki has a weird look on her face, and then they end up talking about it, and Nikki reveals that the mother put the locks on the door because the dad tried to sleep with her while he was drunk. And I think it was just a genuine mistake from how Nikki described it, but it was also very scary for her because she could not get her dad to stop because he was so drunk and out of it. And so that was a scary moment. The mom gave her dad an ultimatum, and then she put the locks on the door, and Chloe was like refusing to believe all of it. She thought Nikki was lying and trying to make things worse for her and difficult for her and ruin her memories of her father. And so we do see these flashbacks of things that happened when they were younger. So their dad took them out swimming. I think we saw that Chloe almost drowned or something like that. We see that he makes them skin a rabbit. Nikki's scared to do it, but Chloe steps up and said, hey, I'll do it, whatever. And then I think we see, oh, actually, I think we see both sisters. They're kind of haunted by their dad's ghost, so he'll show up at certain times and kind of just say something snarky or smart for Nikki. And then I think he's a little bit nicer when Chloe sees him. And then Chloe also sees Adam's ghost, and he's kind of, I guess, not necessarily filling her in on things that happen, but he's also kind of trying to explain himself or something like that. And so we just see that the girls, they have a fractured relationship because of different things that happen when they were growing up as kids, and then everything that happened with Adam and Ethan. And then also there's this one scene that I thought was really great where it is Chloe talking to the mom about Nikki, and she's just talking about how Nikki is like she's really struggling and she wants to help, she needs help and that sort of thing. But then the mom is like really protective of Nikki, and she's just like, you don't know what motherhood does to a woman, blah blah blah. She knows that Nikki is struggling, but she also wants Chloe to take it easy on Nikki because of whatever she's going through. And we see that Chloe keeps pushing, and the mom just gets fed up and she slaps her. And I think that is also a point of friction between the girls because Chloe isn't really understanding everything that Nikki is going through, and we'll learn a little bit more about that as the season continues. Okay, so let's get into the sister wives dynamic of it all. So Nikki was married to Adam first. My sister and I actually thought that Chloe stole Nikki's life, but what we learned from just the backstory is it's basically Chloe's wealth, and she kind of brought Adam up, so she didn't really steal Nikki's life. But Nikki was married to Adam first, and then what we find out is that she gave birth, she was drinking a lot, and then there's this moment where Adam is like, hey Chloe, I'm concerned about Nikki, Ethan's not safe. And how we see this event happening is we see Adam coming home, Nikki is face down in the pool, Ethan is face down in the pool, he goes to Ethan, he gets him out, he goes to get Nikki out, Ethan's okay, Nikki's okay, but then he is basically begging Chloe to help him back up the fact that Nikki is not fit to be a mom to Ethan. Ethan is not safe around her, and it is with Chloe's help that he is able to get get Ethan taken away from Nikki. And then eventually, I don't know how this really happened. I don't know if they started like their romantic relationship before they sealed the nail in Nikki's coffin and got Ethan completely taken away from her, or if it was after all of that happened. But Adam and Chloe start hooking up. Basically, they end up getting married, and what they end up doing is just referring to Nikki as Adam's wife or ex-wife, and they don't really explain the relationship between Nikki and Chloe. So to the public and to Chloe's circle of friends, they just know that Adam's ex is Ethan's mom, but they don't know that Ethan's mom is also Chloe's sister. And so this comes out during the trial that, you know, they're sister wives or whatever, and this makes them look bad because this is something that not a lot of people knew. So Catherine feels really betrayed by this because she has gone above and beyond to help Chloe get to where she is, and she's taken a lot of shots herself, being that she's super influential. She's the first Black millionaire, I think, in this universe, and so she's a big deal, and she feels betrayed by the fact that Chloe did not open up and share this part of her life with her. And so it does take some time for her to get over that and all of that stuff, but that is really the backstory in terms of how Nikki and Chloe got attached to Adam, and then we later have Ethan kind of coming into the picture. Okay, so now let's talk about the trial. So we know that Ethan is on trial for his dad's murder. We have Catherine really pulling a lot of strings. She has connections all over the place, and so she's able to get different stories put in the press, so she's able to squash certain stories. And so there is this moment where I don't know exactly what happens, but Nikki or Chloe is really upset by something, and they go to this party. She brings, or maybe a wake or something for Adam, and she brings Nikki with her to Catherine's home. There's a reporter there, but he's off the record. He's there off the record. And then for whatever reason, Chloe gets upset with Nikki, so she ends up talking to him and like venting to him. And she does this intentionally, I feel like, because she's just telling him all of this stuff about Nikki and making Nikki look bad. And I think Catherine maybe somehow gets that story leaked or actually put into the press, and so now everyone has this negative opinion of Nikki because she's an addict, she lost custody of her son and all of that stuff. And then I don't know if at that point that's how the whole sister wives thing come out, but Catherine is very instrumental in helping them navigate the trial and getting Ethan off the hook. We also have Catherine helping Chloe, because Chloe again runs her own company. There's a board that she answers to, and Catherine is Chloe's biggest advocate, so she's able to get the board to back off and just kind of wait for Chloe to basically be able to do her job again. And what we know from earlier on is that Chloe is receiving threats from somebody. It turns out that it's coming from a computer attached to her company, so she thinks that an employee is targeting her family, threatening them, and all of that stuff. And what comes out at the trial is it's actually Ethan who is using that computer and sending threats and posting nasty messages about his dad, about his mom on the internet, and they use this against Ethan to show that he has this rage towards his father, and as further proof as why he's the one who killed his father. And a large part of why they're able to go this route is because Detective Nancy is super convinced that there's some type of hostile relationship between Ethan and Adam. And it comes out that there was a hostile relationship. Adam was always picking on Ethan about his weight and just kind of really trying to push him to do things to be better. And we do see this scene where Adam goes to confessional and he's confessing or whatever to his Catholic priest, and he's just venting about Ethan and not being able to, I guess, motivate him, and how he's spoiled basically, and he feels bad. He's apologetic of something, and then the priest says, "Hey, I forgive you," and then he's like, "For what?" And then you have to name that, whatever. So we do see that Adam was verbally abusive to Ethan, and this is part of why Ethan does not like his father at times. Also, in terms of the trial, Michelle Sanders is Ethan's lawyer, and their whole strategy basically is to find someone else to paint as a potential suspect to lessen the attention on Ethan and make it less plausible that he was the one who committed this crime. And so we know that they have a roster of people they want to testify on Ethan's behalf, but this is only going to happen if there's something that pushes them to absolutely have to testify just because they're on the witness list or whatever. Because I mean, they actually have to testify. So we have Nikki testifying, and she's just basically saying, you know, I wasn't fit to be a good mom to Ethan. We talked here and there, but not about a whole lot. So basically the prosecution paints her as, because she wasn't around Ethan, she didn't really know him well enough to know if he committed this murder. Then we have Chloe testifying, and she outs that Adam was physically abusive to her. She outs that she told her lover, Jake, who is Adam's co-worker. So this forces Jake to take the stand, and Jake basically, instead of answering all the questions, he just pleads the fifth. So he's like, hey, you know, I don't want to answer in case I may incriminate myself. And this looks bad for Jake, and it's good for Ethan because he pleads the fifth on all of the questions that they asked him. So in the jury's mind, they're like, hey, maybe Ethan didn't do this. And so this ends up getting Ethan off the hook, but this angers Bill, this angers Jake, because Chloe directly put them in the line of fire by forcing Jake to testify. And then also this just complicates things with them for the Gentry group, because while all of this is going on, everyone is thinking that Adam was killed because of his connection to the Gentry group. They were thinking, hey, the Gentry group is this powerful group, they're going to silence people who are not going along with their agenda, whatever. And the Gentry group, it turns out that they are basically forcing people to work as indentured servants. So they're flying in people to work on building different projects or taking their passports and basically forcing them to work. And so obviously this is considered human trafficking. So this would be a big deal if it gets out. And so Bill is trying to protect this secret. He's openly hostile to Chloe, but he does it in this covert kind of way to where only she can pick up on it by reading between the lines and all of this stuff. So Chloe is a huge threat to not necessarily Jake, but what Jake is trying to do, and then also Bill, and then Catherine is trying to help Chloe navigate all of this. So now that we have Ethan completely off the hook, he's found not guilty, he gets to go home, and we see this talk between Chloe and Ethan, and basically they are just having a conversation about different things that they went through, because it comes out that Ethan, I don't know if he knew that, I don't know if in real time he told Chloe, no, he did. He told Chloe that he knew that the dad, Adam, was abusive towards her, and then I think she is understanding of why he may have been like upset with Adam or whatever, and then he explained that he broke the window in the house because one thing that came up, Detective Nancy, she was like, hey, you know, the window was broken from the outside, and after the place was already basically staged to make it look like a robbery, Ethan reveals that he did that because he thought Chloe killed Adam, so he was trying to protect her. And so then Chloe's like, hey, you know, I didn't kill Adam, so who did? And so they're really trying to put the pieces together, and again, they're really focusing on the Gentry group, and they then realized that he was working with the FBI, and maybe this is why he was killed. Okay, so now finding the killer. So now we're at this point where Ethan is like, hey, you know, I didn't kill Adam. Chloe's like, hey, I didn't kill Adam, so what's going on? And so this is where we find out that Nikki was the one who killed Adam. So just to give you a backstory, so we know that Ethan was in touch with Nikki. She said on the stand, hey, we didn't talk about what was going on between Adam and Chloe. That was a lie. So Ethan did call Nikki the day Adam was murdered and said, hey, I saw a fight between mom and dad the other day. He was rough with her. I didn't like it. It was scary. And Nikki did not take this very well because, one, she, at this point, she's aware of the fact that Adam drugged her and basically caused her to pass out in the pool. And the reason they found this out was because the story was that Ethan almost drowned in the pool. He had requested the police report from that day that he almost drowned, and it said that he didn't have any water in his lungs or anything like that. So he's like, hey, what's going on? So then it comes out that basically Adam set Nikki up, and then he got Chloe to buy into it because he just wanted Nikki out of the picture. And I guess he was trying to, I don't know if he was trying to manipulate and trap Chloe, but he was basically discarding Nikki and taking in Chloe. So Nikki was aware of this. She knew that he might try something funny with Chloe, being that he already did that with her. She was not gonna let that happen. So when she gets this call, she's at Adam's mother's house and she was helping her do something. She gets the call, she runs out. She had thrown her phone, cracked it, left it on the table. I guess she drove all the way to New York to confront Adam. She confronts him. He's like, hey, you can't be here. You're not getting near Chloe, Ethan, whatever. And she refuses to leave. And he tries to attack her, I think, and she ends up stabbing him and she runs away. And what we know at this point is that she stabbed him with her own knife. But Nikki and Chloe have the same knives that I think were gifted to them by their father. So at the beginning, I mentioned that Chloe ran out of the house with a bloody knife. If they had tested it, they probably would have not said that that was the murder weapon, because I guess maybe each individual knife would be slightly different. I'm not 100% sure, but in the event that they weren't, she would have been on the hook for this if they thought that was a murder weapon, just because the two women had similar knives. So that's why the knives are important, because they have similar knives, but one was the murder weapon and one wasn't. So Nikki stabbed Adam, she ran out, and then she goes back to Ohio. She tells Adam's mother, hey, Adam's dead, and then I guess the news breaks later. And so the detective, she's like, hey, you know, I want to go visit Adam's mother and figure out what's going on. And so she gets to Ohio, she sits down with Adam's mother, they're talking about everything, and it comes out that Nikki left her phone behind, and the only reason why they ruled Nikki out as a suspect because her phone pinged in Ohio. So now she's realizing, hey, she wasn't with her phone. The cell phone data is not correct, and she's putting together all of the pieces. And then because Adam's mother said, hey, she told me in the morning, and then by the afternoon it was on the news. And I think they called Nikki at a specific time, so she knew that Nikki had told Adam's mother because she was the one who did it and she knew when it happened. And so Adam's mother's like, hey, what are you writing down? And she's like, hey, I didn't tell you anything. I think she's not trying to get Nikki in trouble. She knows that there's something off about what's going on. And so then what we have happening is Nancy is calling her boss and she's like, hey, I talked to the mother, it was Nikki who did it, blah, blah, blah. I got Nikki's DNA off a cigarette butt, it's gonna match Adam's clothing, blah, blah, blah. But all of this just goes away and is useless because with Detective Nancy like harassing Chloe and Nikki basically, Nikki really wanted to find dirt on Nancy to use against her to basically blackmail her into backing off or whatever. And so what happens is they follow Detective Nancy to this like nursing home, and there's a black guy in there that she's with, and what we end up finding out, we kind of already knew this from just seeing Nancy's side of the storyline, but Nikki is realizing this, that basically Nancy had been pursuing a suspect with a specific name and a specific race. She found another black person with that same name, and she was pursuing that guy. He's realized it was just her, so he started beating her up. I think her friends or the other detective partners and cops, whatever, came to her defense, and then maybe they all beat him up or she beat him up, I'm not sure. And then they realized that, hey, this isn't the person we're after, so we just beat up an innocent guy. So I guess out of guilt, she's been taking care of him in the nursing home and making sure that he's okay. The guy mentions that he has dental issues, and then she offers to send him to like her sister-in-law for free, whatever. And so she feels guilty about this, but she's also only able to continue working because nobody knows that this happened because the police station, they covered up. And so Nikki finds out about this using a, I guess, hacker or private investigator that Chloe was working with earlier to figure out who was threatening her. So Nikki has all of this information. She goes to Catherine and says, hey, Catherine, I need you to get this information out there. And so when Detective Nancy is making that call to her boss to say, hey, we got Nikki, she's the one, he's like, hey, save it. I put a stop on the labs that you ordered. You're basically off duty, you're off this case. And then she realizes that the story about the suspect that she beat up has gone public, and so her career is going to go down the drain. Okay, so now cleaning up loose ends. By now, Chloe and Nikki know everything, and they need to figure out who killed Adam. And so now they know Nikki killed Adam. How do we protect Nikki at this point? And so we have Chloe, who's basically on the outs with Bill. He was basically threatening her. She goes to him and mock surrenders, like, hey, I have these papers that Adam was hiding. I don't want anything to do with this. I just want to start over with Ethan, blah, blah, blah. I'm giving this to you because I trust you. I want to get back in your good graces again and whatever. So we see her have that conversation with him. He takes her at face value. Then we have this moment where Detective Bowen, he was working with the FBI agent to basically go after the Gentry group. They get a tip that, hey, Bill's involved, he has something, and they go to his house to search it, and they find the papers that Chloe had just given him, so he looks guilty. Chloe additionally wiped the knife clean and put it in his possessions, and now he's on the hook for Adam's murder. Catherine was seeing all of this, and she had a reaction that I don't know if it's towards Adam or if it's towards Bill for being wrapped up in all of this stuff. And so Bill is done, he's finished, and he's on the hook for Adam's murder, so now Nikki is fine. And then it cuts to Detective Nancy in a bar drinking, and she's seeing all of this play out on the television, and she knows that they've arrested the wrong person. And then what we have happening is that the sisters, Chloe and Nikki, they meet back at the house. They're having dinner. Nikki is upset because Catherine brought up this book deal that Chloe did not mention to Nikki, so she feels like Chloe is more concerned about her lifestyle and all of that stuff. And so Nikki's not happy about that. And Ethan also wants to leave, so she's threatening, like, hey, we're gonna leave if you're not all in on this family, on the three of us and all of this stuff. If you're keeping stuff from me, you're not being honest. And so they kind of like bridge the gap and make amends. And then Chloe's like, hey, you guys are all I have. This is my family, blah, blah, blah. And so they are able to reconcile. And people kept talking about the rabbit dinner that she was putting together, and this is a flashback or a callback to how her father made her kill a rabbit. So the implication here, because we later find Jake dead on the beach, I think she killed Jake, but people are saying from the books that Jake was probably killed by Bill or something like that. So I'm not sure if this is going to lead us to season 2, but for season 1, everything is wrapped up pretty nicely for Chloe and Nikki. Bill's on the hook for everything, Ethan's fine, and the sisters are able to make amends, and that is where season 1 ends. Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, I really enjoyed watching the Better Sister. It didn't turn out exactly the way I thought it did, but everything was wrapped up by the 8th episode, which is good. I am looking forward to season 2. I don't know if they'll actually do a season 2. I'm not sure what will happen in that storyline. It'll be really cool to find out more about the Gentry group and what happened with Jake and all of that stuff. But I also think that season 2 may not be necessary, just because everything was tied up so well in season 1. So I am looking forward to more projects from Jessica Biel, just because this is the second project of hers that was really good, and so I'm just really excited to see what else she has in the pipeline. I know that I like when actors become executive producers or they work on projects kind of like behind the scenes and also act in them, because it's just a way to expand their skill set and also continue acting and doing what they love, because once you get to a certain point you don't really act anymore, but to stay involved in acting you can be the person behind the camera who's either writing the script or producing or directing, all of that stuff. And so I'm really excited to see Jessica Biel doing that, because I do know her from 7th Heaven. Obviously she's married to Justin Timberlake, and beyond that I don't know if I've seen a lot of her work. Like, I can't, other than 7th Heaven and The Sinner, I can't recall what else she's been in, but I know that she's been around for a long time, since the late 90s, early 2000s, so she's been in the acting world for a very long time, and I am super excited about her projects. So yeah, this is where I'm gonna end the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.